It started on an ordinary Thursday morning, the kind of morning where sunlight poured lazily through the kitchen blinds and the coffee machine sputtered with its comforting hum. My cabin sat at the edge of the cul-de-sac, tucked away beneath tall oak trees that had been there longer than the neighborhood itself. I always loved the quiet, birds chirping, leaves rustling, the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. It was peace, the kind you only realize you're addicted to once it's threatened. And oh, it was about to be threatened. I didn't know it yet, but a storm was moving in. Not of thunder or rain, but of entitlement, arrogance, and the unshakable belief of one woman who thought the entire neighborhood bent to her will. Her name? Karen. The kind of name whispered like a curse around the block. The kind of person who wasn't satisfied until everyone else was miserable. At first, she was just a nuisance. Complaints slipped into my mailbox about things that weren't even violations. My mailbox being a shade too rustic, my truck being parked too close to the curb, even the American flag on my porch being too large. I laughed them off. You had to. There was no winning against people who lived for confrontation. But then one morning, I opened my front door and saw her standing there. No knock, no greeting, just standing, hands on her hips, squinting at my living room as if she owned it. "Excuse me," I said, my voice still groggy from sleep. "Can I help you?" "You need to understand something," she snapped, stepping inside as if I'd rolled out a red carpet. "This home, this yard, this street, it all falls under my oversight, and I don't like the way you're living here." That was the beginning. The moment the line was crossed. The house had been in my family for generations, and I'd inherited it after my father passed. It wasn't fancy like the newer homes in the development, but it had history. Hardwood floors creaked with stories of decades past. The fireplace still smelled of the cedar logs my dad used to burn in the winter. Every corner of it was mine, earned, loved, and defended. Karen didn't see it that way. She strutted through my living room pointing at family photos. "Clutter," she muttered. She glanced at my rug. "Outdated." She ran a finger across my windowsill and scoffed. "Dust. You know this reflects badly on the entire neighborhood?" I stood there, stunned. "This isn't a model home, it's where I live. You can't just walk in here and start criticizing everything." Her eyes flashed with that mix of faux authority and self-righteousness I would come to know far too well. "Actually, I can. As part of the HOA leadership, I'm empowered to ensure community standards are upheld. And right now, you're failing." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe someone could be so delusional. "Karen, this house isn't even part of the HOA. It predates your whole development. My property isn't under your jurisdiction." She froze, just for a second. Then her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll see about that." And with that, she stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frames rattled on the walls. I thought it was over. I thought maybe she'd huff and puff, gossip with her little circle, and eventually leave me alone. I was wrong. That day was only the prologue. The next week, things started small. Trash mysteriously appeared on my lawn. A few broken bottles near the mailbox. My garbage cans knocked over. At first, I figured it was raccoons or maybe some local kids being reckless. But then I caught her, Karen herself, sprinkling birdseed all over my driveway so flocks would swarm and make a mess. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, running outside. She didn't flinch. She looked right at me, smug. "You should thank me. Birds brighten the neighborhood. Maybe they'll distract people from your eyesore of a home." I clenched my fists but held back. People like her wanted a reaction. They fed on it. "Stay off my property," I warned. But warnings meant nothing to Karen. 2 days later, she showed up again, this time with a clipboard, snapping photos of my backyard through the slats of the fence. When I confronted her, she claimed, "I'm documenting violations." "Violations of what?" I demanded. Her smirk widened. "We'll find something." That's when I realized this wasn't about rules or community standards or even the HOA. This was personal. She had decided I was her enemy, and she was going to make my life hell. The escalation didn't stop. I came home from work to find chalk lines drawn across my driveway, as if she were planning a construction project on my property. My water hose was mysteriously cut in half. The flowers I planted, ones my late mother had loved, were yanked from the soil, roots exposed and drying in the sun. Each act chipped away at my patience, but I told myself to stay calm, to document everything. Neighbors started noticing too. One whispered, "She's been like this before, but never this bad. She's fixated on you." Fixated. That word stuck with me. And I began to wonder, what happens when fixation turns into obsession? The breaking point came on a rainy Friday night. I was upstairs reading when I heard it, a crash, sharp and violent from downstairs. My heart pounded. I grabbed the old baseball bat by my nightstand and crept down the stairs. The front door was wide open, and there she was, Karen, in my living room, muddy footprints trailing behind her, a crowbar in hand. She was smashing my bookshelf, sending splinters across the floor. Family photos lay shattered, glass glinting in the lamplight. "Get out of my house!" I roared, but she didn't. She turned to me, eyes wild, hair plastered to her face from the rain. "You don't belong here. This home should be mine. It's ruining the aesthetic of the neighborhood, and if you won't fix it, I will." She swung the crowbar again, this time at the coffee table, splitting it clean in half. My chest tightened with rage. I lunged, yanking the crowbar from her grip and shoving her toward the door. "You're insane! I'm calling the police!" She stumbled, but didn't run. She stood in the doorway, rain soaking her blouse, and hissed, "You'll regret this. I'll make sure of it." Then she vanished into the night. When the cops arrived, they took my statement but shrugged. "Do you have proof she broke in?" one asked. I gestured to the wreckage around us. "Look at this." But the officer sighed. "Without video evidence or a witness, it's just your word against hers. She'll say you invited her in and things got heated. Our hands are tied." That's when I realized I couldn't rely on the system to protect me. If I wanted peace, I'd have to take matters into my own hands. The very next day I got to work. I installed cameras, inside, outside, hidden in places she wouldn't think to look. Every corner of my home became a watchtower. I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. Sure enough, it didn't take long. 1 week later, at exactly 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed with an alert. Motion detected. I pulled up the feed, and there she was, Karen, creeping across my backyard with a pair of bolt cutters. She snipped the lock on my shed and began rifling through my tools, muttering to herself. This time, I didn't intervene. I let the cameras roll. I let her dig her own grave. Over the next few nights, she returned again and again, smashing garden lights, spray painting the fence, even trying to pry open a window. And every time, I captured it all in crystal clear footage. When I had enough evidence to fill a hard drive, I made my move. I invited the HOA board to a neighborhood safety meeting at my house. Karen showed up too, of course, smug and ready, to gloat about whatever nonsense she'd cooked up. But when everyone was seated, I dimmed the lights and hit play. The footage spoke for itself. Karen creeping around like a burglar. Karen smashing property. Karen breaking into my shed. Karen trying my windows. Gasps filled the room. One board member muttered, "My God." Another whispered, "She's lost it." Karen's face went pale. "This is taken out of context," she screeched. "He set me up." But no one believed her. The evidence was too damning. Within days, she was stripped of her HOA position, fined for damages, served with a restraining order. Neighbors who once tolerated her avoided her like the plague. For the first time in months, my home felt like mine again. Weeks passed. The oaks swayed gently in the breeze again. My flowers bloomed undisturbed. The quiet peace I'd cherished returned. But there was still one last twist in the tale. One morning, I woke to the sound of trucks outside. Karen's house, directly across from mine, was being packed up. Foreclosure. She hadn't paid her dues, hadn't kept up with her debts. I stood on my porch, sipping coffee, watching as movers hauled out her things. She spotted me and glared, venom in her eyes, before screaming, "This isn't over!" But it was. Because later that month, the property went up for auction. And with a smile, I signed the papers. Karen's former home, her fortress of control, was now mine. And the sweetest irony? I didn't even move into it. I rented it out to a quiet young couple, people who valued peace just as much as I did. Every night since, as I sit by my fireplace with the soft crackle of cedar wood burning, I think about that storm that once tried to consume me. How close. Entitlement came to stealing my sanctuary, and I smile, because in the end, peace wasn't just restored, it was doubled. Karen had tried to claim my home. Instead, I claimed hers, and that was the ultimate revenge.